Hi, I'm Jim Shaw, back here at the Buckman Tavern here at Lexington Center. I'm with candidate Mary Ann Stewart, who is no stranger to public office here in Lexington, or I should say public service, because it goes well beyond the bounds of being in public office. Public office was just sort of a way to a means for you, because you've been involved in so many things, or I used to say a means to an end, because you were actually you were elected to the school committee some time ago, and you've sort of grown up into that, and now serving on the State Board of Education. Before I ask you to say a few words, I actually do want to say a couple of things. You did serve 2 terms on the Lexington School Committee, elected initially in 2009, re-elected in 2012. You were appointed by Governor Patrick to serve on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education to a 5-year term in 2014. So you're in your 4th year of that. You're a current member of Lexington Town Meeting. And of course, I'm saying this, and you know all of this, but I'm just saying it for the edification of our people out there. But you were elected at Town Meeting in 2006, and you've served straight through since then. President of the state PTA, serving on various national PTA boards, and obviously very active in the local PTA when you were sort of here on the school committee and prior to that. So I'd like to ask you to sort of just start by telling people, why, with so many great candidates in the race, you were a candidate for the state Senate, and you were out there working very hard in that race. I know you're working very hard in this race, and you've got some great supporters, people who are saying very, very great things about you. I know that Gene Krieger and some others who are sort of very active in this community are very enthusiastically supporting your candidacy. So you do have some great supporters. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about why you're running, and why at this point, why it's important for you to serve in the state legislature.
Sure, of course. This is an opportunity for me to really expand on the service, public service that I started decades ago when our children were in school, and even before that. And it's an opportunity to extend my leadership on the critical issues that we face in the 15th Middlesex District, which is all of Lexington and 2 parts of Woburn, and across the Commonwealth as a whole. And I came into this and coming up from the local community. My husband was born and raised here in Lexington, and when we moved in 24 years ago, he still had deep roots here. So we came in as a young family, and we came in through affordable housing. And our family benefited from that program. And we lived at Emerson Gardens for 5 years, and then we were able to purchase our house over near the Arlington Reservoir, which is where we still live. And it's just been a way for me to continue to serve in the community. When I I came up through the site council and the PTA at Harrington School, and then ran for the school committee. For 2 terms I served as chair, and then Governor Patrick appointed me to the State Board of Education. But as I said, I've been a long-time community activist on the issues that seem to be front and center right now, whether we're talking across the Commonwealth or whether we're talking nationally. We know we're not going to get a lot of support, at least in the short term, from the federal government on protections for the environment. We know that they want to make deep cuts to the Affordable Care Act, which will have a huge impact on our Medicare and Medicaid program, and so we have to keep them from getting what they want. And if they do make reductions, then we're going to have to really fight for finding that revenue so that we can continue that program. So I've been a strong voice for public education, certainly from all of the time I've spent on the various task forces, working groups, et cetera, at the state and national level. It's a personal issue, and I'll be the strongest candidate for reworking the foundation budget when we get to that point. Right now, we really need to think about implementing the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. The Senate has acted on that every year since they were made, so for the past 3 years, but the House has fallen down every year, still can't do it. And then of course we have affordable health care for everybody that's so necessary, more transparency in government, the environment, as I said, rapidly transitioning to renewable energy. That bill was watered down at the end of the session by the House. They fell down on safe communities for immigrants and the undocumented, yet Lexington was able to pass a resolution at town meeting to protect any of the undocumented who live, travel, or work in Lexington, but we need to get that across the whole state. So those are issues that I'm passionate about. And in addition to the revenue questions and how we're going to implement a progressive taxation program, I'm the candidate, I'm ready to do it, and I'm really looking forward to having that opportunity.
Well, let's start with that, because I do want to sort of bounce back. Education obviously is your forte. That's something that you've been passionate about, and I know you well enough to know that there are so many other things about you that you've been involved with over the years. But you have been endorsed by a lot of the progressive organizations in town. Progressive Dems. Maybe you can talk a little about some of that, because I mean, I didn't really discuss this with other candidates, but it's so prevalent on your website that you have a lot of these endorsements from progressive organizations. So tell me a little bit about that, and
Sure.
why is that so important to you?
Well, this district is a strongly progressive district, and we've been boldly represented by Jay Kaufman for the past 24 years, to the point where Jay hasn't had a contested race since 2002. And so the issues, like I said, that he has cared about and the causes that he championed are still in front of us. And it means a lot to me to have garnered these endorsements and earned these endorsements from Progressive Massachusetts, Progressive Democrats of Massachusetts, Mass Alliance, which is a coalition of progressive organizations across the state, more than 20. That would be LGBTQ, women's groups, healthcare, environment, union, many groups across the state that are pushing for a more progressive Commonwealth. And so to have their support, I also yesterday was informed that I received the Working Families Party endorsement. That's a national, regional, statewide organization, and I'm very proud to have their support as well. They're also working to get progressive candidates elected in all kinds of states across the country. So it matters to me. I've been very involved with Progressive Democrats in Massachusetts. I contacted Peter Enrich, who is the state chair, and he's he's a former selectman and national expert on taxation. And I met with him in 2007 and asked if I could, so I wanted to learn a little more about Progressive Democrats in Massachusetts, and asked him if I could be part of the work. And the work that they were doing here in Lexington was all around revenue options. And I was very interested in that. My background is in music and art, and I really wanted to have a better understanding, follow the money for how education is funded and all of our public structures, how they get funded, and ensure that we have the revenue that we need. We go from one austerity budget to another, it seems, under our current administration, Republican administration, the governor, and we just really need to have voices in the State House that are pushing for and fighting for progressive change, which Jay has been doing for years and years. And those voices are underheard. I think when Jay first came into the State House, there were maybe a handful of progressive voices who were doing this work, and over time the Progressive Caucus has grown, and now there are about, several dozen progressive legislators in the State House, and that's a good thing. Not quite a majority yet, but hopefully.
It's not enough to say I'm a liberal Democrat. You have to be. You really have to be dedicated.
You
to
really do.
progressive.
You really have to push harder for these things, because we're seeing time and time again just how much the leadership is drawn to compromise. It's a habit. It's habitual compromise, and it's really failing us, as we've seen. I think the first action taken in this legislative session 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, in 2017, was a vote to increase salaries. and then not very much happened. And then it's a race to the end, and there's a lot of chaos around getting bills passed. We left out conversion therapy. That didn't get a vote. There was nothing on Safe Communities Act, again, even though there had been some energy around adding it into the budget as an amendment, some of those key components.
They wait till the end.
Wait to the
you know,
end,
and then with the change in leadership in the Senate, they didn't even work that last weekend going in because the new Senate president, didn't want to work that weekend.
Yeah.
Not sure what the intent for that was, but
There was no
but even
debate.
so, that's only 2 days.
There was no debate in the House on these key critical
Right.
issues, and
It's not just the last minute nature of what they were doing coming up against.
No, it's a habit. This is the way they like to do things, and that's a problem because it's leaving, in the example of the Foundation Budget Review Commission, both the Senate and the House had agreements. The Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations have been supported by the Senate and by the House, but then they had to work in some conferencing at the end, and the House just couldn't, leadership in the House could not see a way to fund education for English language for students who need that education and for students who come from economically disadvantaged families. There was no rank order in the recommendations when they were presented by the Foundation Budget Review Commission.
So they ended up throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what happened.
they
So
got
nothing
done.
happened.
Nothing happened
Right.
instead of getting 95% of something.
Right. So for 3 years now, that's been the case. And,
Right. And that's frustrating because you're right there on the front line in education, and the foundation budget is really the key to sort of distributing these funds to the various
That's
communities.
right. And in Lexington, we do fine. We have local resources. We're doing okay. But from my perch on the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, I can see how gateway cities are under-resourced, how rural communities are still feeling the pain of the recession and have just don't have enough money to cover their budgets. And with the Foundation Budget Review Commission's acknowledgement that we are between $1 and $2 billion short of state aid for schools and districts, it's unconscionable that we would continue that process, that would continue to be the case for another year. So that's a major, major problem. The other that's very disappointing has been the so-called grand bargain that was struck on $15 minimum wage. That itself was a good thing, but left behind were the tipped employees. So there's no justice for tipped employees. For anyone who is working Sundays, there's no time and a half. Those are issues, and there are a few other things. Those are critical pieces for those people. There's a lot of people who benefited from the $15 wage, and I'm glad that was passed, but it's unfortunate that it wasn't indexed to inflation, and that instead of 4 years, it will be implemented over 5 years. And like I said, it leaves other people who work behind, and we need to work to catch them up.
Because a lot of people are misinformed. They think they're getting $15 an hour now. They don't understand. It's gradual, and it'll,
Yeah.
And I think,
It'll take
but
5
I think
years.
what you're saying is it's a good start. We need to do more.
It's a good start. Same thing for the criminal justice reform package. That was another good start. But there are definitely things on the table that we can fight for, including, minimum sentencing. There's a lot of mandatory minimums. There were some things that were left on the table, which is the way it has been working.
More support for diversionary programs.
Yeah, exactly. I think Peter Katusian's got a really good program that he's piloting.
He's got some spectacular programs for veterans and others.
Yeah.
Every time I turn around, there's something new and innovative coming
especially
out of Middlesex County Sheriff.
Especially for those with mental health. He's really trying to divert them from the incarceration and criminal justice system to getting the actual kinds of resources that they need to fight their addictions or other issues that their mental health issues that they have. So I think that has been a great program, and I look forward to seeing what that yields too. That's another really good thing.
Well, I was on your site, as I have with some of the other candidates,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at climate and environmental justice and renewability energy. Obviously that's an important part that's way up in front, and also animal welfare. I think you're the only candidate who has has any position that anyone can find on animal welfare. So I'd like you to talk, touch on that a little bit. And then I want to get into economic growth and development and
Sure.
some of your thoughts on that, particularly for a small town like Lexington and a mid-sized city like Woburn, because oftentimes the differences are big between what a city needs versus what a town needs, and so at any rate, so tell me a little about animal welfare. Let's go there first.
Yeah, I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Massachusetts Voters for Animals. This is, there's been a lot of concern for animal welfare. There are various, I can't go into all the many details, so there are just many that, where animals are mistreated and inhumanely. And I think that animals deserve certainly care and love, and sometimes that really means protecting them from harsh environments, of course, and I think legislation can help. There's been some recent legislation, and I know that the Senate President herself, Karen Spilka, is a strong supporter of animal welfare. So it's, I think, a growing area. People are realizing that it's an area of concern.
Every day you hear about animal abuse, and it's just it's sickening. It really is. It's like the abuse of children, abuse of animal people, and abuse in general is horrible. But particularly for those who cannot really defend themselves, or the animals that really have no ability to.
They have no voice.
They have no voice.
And so those who advocate for them are their champions, and I am proud to have that play that role, and look forward to that.
Gun safety. I know there's been a lot of activity in Lexington, particularly a groundswell of activity from the youth in Lexington. The schools, they're doing the not just the school walkouts, but just working hard to draw attention to what's been going on around the country. So tell me a little bit about some of your positions on gun safety and violence prevention.
Well, you're right to really highlight the work of the students at Lexington High School and Lexington Says Enough. They're doing tremendous,
even middle schools,
tremendous work. It's great, and at the middle schools. And our community is, the adults are drawn into the energy and the activity of the students, and it's tremendous. I've been active with the various activities that have been around, so beginning with the protest out over in the Depot Square back just a week after the Marjorie Stoneham Douglas shooting, and then they had a forum at I can't remember, not Temple Isaac, Temple Amuna, and
yes,
it was a tremendous presentation. Very powerful presentation. And then there was another one over here on the Battle Green a few weeks ago. Again, just drawing attention to the tragedies. Again, I'm proud to have the support of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. It's a recommendation, a candidate distinction, recognizing that I am a champion for gun violence prevention and safety. This isn't a political issue, it's really a common sense issue. And I think, while we have very strong laws here in Massachusetts, anything that we can do to strengthen them, I will absolutely support, and I will follow Attorney General Maura Healey's lead on this. She's been an amazing champion on this issue, as she has been on many issues that she's taken the fight nationally on a number of issues. So I'm grateful to her and for her work, and continue to follow that lead.
Great. Let's talk a little about economic development. I'm going to ask a question I've asked, and it's kind of I've been talking, tourism seems to be a central theme here in Lexington. It's a good place to talk about economic development because, over the last few years, tourism in Lexington has really sort of grown to become an important sort of source of revenue. And I think it's always been there, but we're really beginning to harness it and make it work better for us or more effectively. We've been working with the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau in tandem with the Town Tourism Committee and other elected boards like the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager's Office. What we find is that there seems to be a disconnect, particularly with the Governor's Office. There's no dedicated funding. The Mass Office of Travel and Tourism Their budget's always held, it's always in jeopardy. One year they zero funded mass office travel and tourism, and the legislature put the money back in through amendments and vetoes, and we had to the governor vetoed, we have to overturn the veto, and it's been a seesaw back and forth. But Lexington is part of this growing concern that economic development, that tourism, they say, is now the third largest industry in Massachusetts, and Lexington is among the top 3 or 4 destinations for people who are visiting, not only statewide, but locally, regionally, nationally, internationally. It's a big deal for Lexington. So they're talking about a trust fund that would create a dedicated revenue stream for tourism. So a certain amount of the revenue from meals taxes and hotels taxes would go into this trust fund, so that we'd know that there'd be a certain amount of money for tourism. Would you support that?
Oh yeah, that sounds great to me. I mean, here we are, we're sitting in
Right.
Buckman Tavern, which is one of the jewels in the crown of the historical
Here in Lexington.
homes here
It
in
sure
Lexington.
is.
So it's awesome. So it's a real treat to be here. I think I would love to know more about this trust fund. I think it's a great idea. It sounds right to me that Lexington could take its meals tax, a portion of meal taxes, and there's definitely things they can do. Yeah, no, there's definitely things they can do here locally, make decisions about this. And I'm not familiar with the regional group that you mentioned. Well, I've heard of them, but I'm not closely associated with their work. But I think anything that we can do collaborating on this, certainly Lexington has seen its share of tourism growth, and I think the tourism committee has done a tremendous job to really raise the level of presence in the community and out and about across the Commonwealth as well. So I think that's a tremendous effort. It's a great boon to our community.
And how do you, in terms of economic development on a local level, what do you see for ways at this legislature where we could help stimulate local economies?
Yeah, I think one of the major jobs of a state rep is to really help stimulate the economic growth and development in the district. And so I would really want to hear the ideas of groups like the Chamber of Commerce and other local established groups to the Tourism Committee, to hear about the history, some of the ideas that they have. And I think we should all be supporting our local businesses to a degree that we can in every way that we can, especially the independent small business owners. I think that is a tremendous benefit. Again, that's another sort of jewel in the crown.
And, I'm proud to say, if I can interject, Lexington Chamber of Commerce and the Retailers Association both endorse Open to All, the campaign to make sure that we are serving every community as part of the LBG. Help me out.
TQ.
Right. And Lex Pride has sort of pushed forward that initiative, so I'm sure you're very supportive of that.
I am very supportive. I've been pushing yes on question 3. It's appalling that civil rights for any person would be on a ballot question.
Right.
So we absolutely need to support our transgender friends, neighbors. And I was very pleased to hear that the business associations have been strongly in support of question 3, and because it's absolutely the right thing to do, and there shouldn't even be a debate about it. But I think we'll all be fighting for it. That's really critical to have as many advocates as we can have supporting the rights of human rights. They're human rights.
Well, I really appreciate you coming today and sitting with us and talking. I wish we had more time to go over. We did try to touch on a few issues. It's tough when we have so many candidates. Otherwise, I think people would be in their homes for hours and hours and hours watching. But I think you touched on some important issues, and I think people get a sense of where you are in this race and why you're running. So we appreciate you being here. I just ask you at this point to sort of just give us your final thoughts as you're looking at the election just 3 weeks away.
Sure. I would invite voters to visit my website, mariannestewart.org. I want voters to understand that there's a big difference between the candidates in this race, and I'm going to be the candidate who is going to push the hardest for change in the legislature, to move away from, to advocate against the compromise bad habits that the state leadership has found itself in time and time again. I think that leading with values is the critical piece for a legislator. And if we need to compromise, we'll compromise. But it should not be the first thing that we do. We need to lead with values and establish priorities and be strategic about where we want to go. And I have experience doing this for decades. I'm the candidate who is strongest on this issue, and I will bring that. That will be my forte in the State House. And people are more than welcome to check out the endorsements that I have earned. It's why I've been endorsed by leading statewide progressive organizations. We talked about Progressive Democrats of Massachusetts, Progressive Massachusetts, Mass Alliance, and then recently, yesterday, I received the Working Families Party endorsement as well. So please visit my website, and you'll see a lot there that you can, more than you'll need to
What is
have.
the website?
MaryAnnStewart.org.
Great. Well, Mary Ann, thank you so much for being
Thanks,
here.
Jim.
We really do appreciate it, and
My
I
pleasure.
really wish you all the very best in
Thank
this
you very
campaign.
much. Thank you so much.
I think Lexington is fortunate. We have so many great candidates, and you certainly are among them. So
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks for being with us.